Harvard University is on a winning streak. Why is it considering settling with Donald Trump? I have a battle, or at least a healthy debate, with my podcast partner, Ben Meiselas, on Legal AF about whether it's a good idea to settle or whether you should just win it all in a federal courtroom, the way Harvard is set up to do. And why did Harvard put on its board of governors for Harvard Corporation a well-respected ultra-right-wing Republican lawyer? And what role is he going to have in getting Harvard to come to the table and bend the knee to Donald Trump? Those are all questions that need answering, and we do it on Legal AF, the podcast. Take a listen.
But let's talk about what's happening in Harvard, because this does impact geopolitics as well, because I think a lot of what happened behind the scenes, also you had China pissed off, Xi Jinping, a lot of wealthy Chinese families send their kids to Harvard, and Donald Trump's attack on Harvard is impacting that. So part of, to me, the deal, I don't want to call it a deal, the consensus that was between Trump and China had a lot also to deal with a lot of Chinese billionaire kids going to Harvard and them getting screwed as a result. But Harvard so far has stood their ground. They've been standing up to the Trump regime in court. They won the initial temporary restraining order. This was a preliminary injunction that a federal judge in Massachusetts ruled on. Popok, what went down?
Yeah, and I just did a kind of a deep dive on it. There's a win, again, for Harvard with Judge Burroughs in Massachusetts about their participation in the foreign exchange program. 25% or so of Harvard, much like the rest of higher education, especially at the Ivy Leagues and the top universities in America. Let me start with that. Universities want foreign students for two reasons. To promote diversity, that's before it became a four-letter word under Donald Trump. When you and I went to college and law school, a diverse student body was a good thing. It led to a better liberal, and I mean that in the small L sense, liberal education. You learn from people from different walks of life, different socioeconomic backgrounds, different geopolitical backgrounds. I certainly did. My roommate in college, he was from Brownsville, Texas. His father ran the Union Carbide plant in Brownsville, Texas. I learned a lot about Mexico and Texas issues. He had never met a Jewish person. Literally, when I went to college, he was my roommate. He and I became fast friends. I learned a lot from him, and I hope that he did from me. But universities want them for two reasons. One, diversity. Two, they pay top dollar to go. Whereas in order to promote a well-rounded student body of Americans, they often have to compete with student aid and grants and loans and tuition reimbursement and scholarships. They don't do that with a foreign student. So that is top dollar, rack rate students, and they like coming to United States universities because they're some of the best in the world. Harvard has, the Harvard School of Diplomacy, the Kennedy School, the Business School, the Medical School, research programs that attract different percentages, but attract a fair amount of foreign investment and money. And they compete with other Ivy League and Ivy League type schools around the country for foreign exchange students. Trump, under the false flag of promoting or preventing anti-Semitism on campus, didn't like what Harvard did. That's not the reason he went after Harvard. He went after Harvard to send a message trying to take down the oldest university in America with the biggest endowment in order to try to promote his MAGA principles of taking DEI and anything related to it and a liberal education out of universities. That's why. Just like he went after the biggest law firms. And there's a link between the biggest law firms and Harvard I'm going to expound upon in a minute. Harvard in March, after losing $3 billion in grants, that actually just hurt you and me because it goes for research grants, medical research, scientific research that helps Americans. Donald Trump didn't care about that, so he took the $3 billion away. They filed their lawsuit. Also, Donald Trump retaliated against them by going after their ability to have foreign students come to Harvard, which hit them in their balls and in their purse for very, very quickly. Harvard fought back, hired a couple of lawyers. That one was a Harvard grad, the other one that Donald Trump knew well, Robert Hur, who was a prosecutor, U.S. attorney under Donald Trump, also infamously the prosecutor, special prosecutor against Joe Biden for the document issue. So Robert Hur comes in to join a guy from Quinn Emanuel, Bill Burke, who used to represent the Trump organization as the chief ethics counsel about 3 months ago. So those two join forces, and they sue on behalf of the Harvard faculty. They get Judge Burroughs, and they start winning. We like winning. They win on retaliation related to the foreign program. And then when the temporary restraining order comes out a couple of weeks ago, Trump goes nuclear, to continue the theme today, against Harvard and says, well, all right, well, we'll go after the students and we'll deny them the visas that they need to attend Harvard. And the judge says, that's like the same thing. I'm not going to allow you to do that either. That is arbitrary and capricious. That is Fifth Amendment due process violation and the rest. Then we fast forward to what this hearing was supposed to be about. But right as they're coming into the hearing, Donald Trump starts spouting off in social media posts about a mind-boggling, his words, settlement that's in the works with Harvard. That's going to be big and beautiful. You know, these are Donald Trump isms. And I'm like, what is going on there? How is that happening while they're winning? I guess they're getting some leverage, so maybe they're cutting a deal. But why are they cutting a deal? I think it's important, not just existentially to Harvard, but to higher education, that Harvard doesn't cut a deal. And so then I go look in some of the reporting, and I see at the end of May, there is, got little fanfare, but there is a new person who's appointed to the board of trustees or the board of governors for the Harvard Corporation, which runs Harvard. That's chaired by Penny Pritzker, a Democrat, whose brother is J.B. Pritzker of Illinois, and she used to be Commerce Secretary. And I see this guy who is a Paul Weiss partner, who is the head of their Supreme Court practice in Washington, having come over from Williams and Connolly. And he is an arch conservative. He is right wing. He's argued 40 cases before the United States Supreme Court, worked under Ken Starr, worked in the Solicitor General's office, very well respected, an Indian American guy. He was also top at Paul Weiss. What's the link with Paul Weiss and Trump? Paul Weiss was the first law firm to settle with Donald Trump and pay him $40 million in free legal services, or $45 million, which set the blueprint for dozens of other law firms to come in and settle at much higher numbers. So you got a Paul Weiss settler guy who gets added to obviously appease Donald Trump. This is my reporting, my analysis, at the end of May. He's now working, this is my analysis, he's now working behind the scenes to cut the deal because they've got an appeaser who's going to appease Donald Trump, who's now been appointed to the Harvard board. So that's going on behind the scenes. It's not going to be, and if that happens, even though Judge Burroughs just yesterday granted Harvard a preliminary injunction to keep them in the game for the foreign exchange program for the upcoming year and the foreseeable future until she's done with the merits of the case, unless it's settled. And if it gets settled, and this is the part that I hate, it's going to be by consent decree, which is going to almost be an admission of liability by Harvard and turning over the keys to certain aspects of Harvard faculty, students, curriculum, student life over to the Trump administration, which is why Linda McMahon is rubbing her hands in glee and Donald Trump wants to make this announcement. But it sends, if this happens, and I'm managing expectations here, it's going to happen. It's going to send a terrible message to the other Ivy League schools and it'll give Donald Trump that taste of blood that he loves, just like in the law firms, to go after higher education and try to reshape the face of it before he's done.
Popok, you think that's going to happen? Because you and I may have a disagreement here. You believe that the consent decree is going to be entered into?
You mean as opposed to a settlement agreement?
Regardless, you think that Harvard's going to enter into a deal that's going to give Trump pretty much all of what he wants.
I didn't. I'll tell you what, Ben. I didn't until I researched who they just added to appease the Trump administration, and I'm sure he's working as a board of governor to try to get a settlement. And, and Trump announced. I mean, Trump effectively announced it, which he rarely does unless he thinks.
Let me disagree with you here. Trump lies about everything. So the fact that Trump said there was going to be a deal with India in 2 weeks, and there's a deal with Japan in 2 weeks, and that all these great the guy lies about everything. So I agree with that. To me, the fact that Trump posted about something to me actually shows that it's probably not happening. I'll usually take the opposite of what Trump says. Now, do I believe that there are efforts going on behind the scenes to try to deal with this, because yes, it is damaging to Harvard as well. Even if they, are standing up and have a big endowment, it's not helpful for them to have certain federal programs be cut. So if I was running Harvard, I would probably want to have a multi-pronged approach. Ultimately, I would stand on business, and I would make sure that I did not sacrifice. I would have bright lines that I would have to draw when it comes to academic freedom, academic integrity, diversity of the student body. To me, those were lines that you would never cross, knowing that Donald Trump capitulates, and sometimes Donald Trump just really wants a press release and ultimately does not care about the substance of the deal so he can go out and brag. Would it be part of being a fiduciary to Harvard to at least have somebody explore what the contours of a Donald Trump taco could look like? Trump always chickens out, and what that means, a face-saving thing for Trump, but while not sacrificing anything in terms of what the institution is. Because I can assure you, Popok, that president of Harvard who got a standing ovation during the commencement speeches, the student body there, you would see, if you wanted to see Harvard get really destroyed, Harvard enter into a deal with Donald Trump. That would be the undoing of Harvard very, very quickly. So what I think is happening here is that I do think, to your point, that Harvard has appointed a human being to reach out and to explore with Linda McMahon what a taco could look like. A Trump always chickens out. Can Trump post something and say he did it, but nothing really happens? But then Donald Trump, in Trumpian fashion, knows how to scuttle deals by acting like an asshole. And that's a legal term. Yes. And so Donald Trump then goes, oh, they're talking to me? Okay, I'm going to make this post, and then and on a day when Trump loses big in court to Harvard, Trump wants to make himself feel big and not like a loser. So he posts, I'm winning this negotiation. And here's the thing, as you and I know, as people who have negotiated deals, you don't really win a negotiation. A good negotiation very rarely produces a clear winner and a absolute loser. In negotiations for surrender, that's what takes place. But often in negotiations, both sides leave a little bit on the table, that you try to find opportunities that both sides can save face, can move on, and find. That's not how Trump negotiates. And by the way, that's why Trump's businesses have gone bankrupt in the past, because he negotiates zero-sum games. And oftentimes, you know who the zero is in those zero-sum games? It's Donald Trump. He often comes out as the zero because the other side sees what he's doing. They find alliances. They build support structures. They think through the issues. They analyze the data, and Trump doesn't. Trump's done that his whole career.
Welcome back. Legal AF. It's hard to believe Ben and I founded that podcast 5 years ago, just about 5 years ago, at the intersection of law and politics. And now, because of your support, because you vibrate on the same frequency we do, we are now the #1 law and politics podcast on YouTube, number 50 in the world on all other audio podcast platforms. If you know about Legal AF and you're already part of our audience, we really appreciate you. We have no outside investors. You are our marketing department as we organically grow. If you don't know about Legal AF, we do it every Wednesday and Saturday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time on the Midas Touch Network. We do some rebroadcasting, if you will, over here on Legal AF as well, in order to make it one-stop shop for everything law and politics. Download the audio. Leave a 5-star review. Come over to the video. Use that clip to help us grow the audience. That's what we ask. So until my next report, my next Legal AF contribution, I'm Michael Popok. Can't get your fill of Legal AF? Me neither. That's why we formed the Legal AF Substack. Every time we mention something in a hot take, whether it's a court filing or a oral argument, come over to the Substack. You'll find the court filing and the oral argument there, including a daily roundup that I do called, wait for it, Morning AF. What else? All the other contributors from Legal AF are there as well. We got some new reporting. We got interviews. We got ad-free versions of the podcast and hot takes. Where? Legal AF on Substack. Come over now to free subscribe.